You ready to go, Bone?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. It's we talked about this last week. A lot of focus, of course, on the season for these coaches and playing a game here in 10 days. So it appears a little bit that recruiting has slowed. I know that's not necessarily the case, and you got a great Crimson Tide recruiting nuggets piece that you put out yesterday at BamaInsider.com. Why don't you just bring us up to speed on some of the potential stories that you're following and watching as far as these prospects are concerned with Alabama?
Well, I think with as many people kind of are aware, recruiting has slowed down a good bit just because everybody's pretty much focused on the upcoming season. Everybody's trying to get prepared, and players are recruits. They are kind of focused in on the start of their season, as well as college coaches from all across the country, and that's why this is a dead period, and nobody really does any recruiting. There's plenty of conversations that are still happening, but no visits, and you don't often see a ton of commitments. You have a few commitments happen in the month of August, but for the most part, everything just kind of slows down and really picks back up when the season starts. But there are some key storylines that we're kind of following throughout I would say the next couple months, and it's kind of a wait and see approach in terms of what may happen with some top recruits. The first player that we'll discuss is Zach Evans, the number one running back in the country, who we've discussed for a long period of time, and we just don't know what he's going to do in terms of will he possibly make a decision soon, or will he wait until the very end and make a decision on signing day. Now there's been a lot of chatter for the last really for the last month and a half that he was going to commit before the start of the season. Now that was kind of like, I would say, underground chatter. It wasn't him coming out saying I'm going to commit on August the 28th or anything like that. It was just some things that we were hearing, especially in the month of July, kind of leading up before the dead period ended. We were starting to hear a lot that Alabama was in the driver's seat, that he was going to commit before the start of the season, and then he took those visits to Georgia and Texas A&M and LSU. Then we started hearing a lot about Georgia, and that talk really hasn't slowed down too much about Georgia. And I think they are. I think as of right now, you could probably name them as the leader, but I think it's still a very long way to go with his recruitment, even if he did commit before the season. I don't think that he will slow down his recruitment at all if he does make a decision here pretty soon. I think he'll still take all of his official visits in the fall. I think Alabama, Texas A&M. I think Alabama, Texas A&M, and Georgia are a safe top three right now. Even though he didn't name Texas A&M in his top three back in late May, his top five in late May, I think they're in the top three right now. After taking a couple visits over to College Station this summer. So really kind of waiting to see what happens with him over the course of the next couple weeks. Will he decide before the season kicks off, or will he decide to wait it out and kind of enjoy the whole process? But I definitely, I think a lot of people are keeping a close eye on his recruitment. And then, Eric Gilbert, 5-star tight end out of Marietta, Georgia, another 5-star that we're watching pretty closely. Just kind of waiting to see what he ends up doing, because he's mentioned making a decision early on in his senior season, but he just hasn't released a date yet. He doesn't know when he's going to decide. I think Alabama's right there in the mix for him after a couple visits to Tuscaloosa this summer. And I've said this before. I thought that Tennessee and Georgia were the top two schools for him for a very long time. But I think after a couple visits to Alabama, I think Alabama is right there in the mix, possibly top two, maybe even number one. But he still has his other official visits to take. He took an official visit to Alabama in June, so it still leaves official visits to Georgia and Tennessee, and possibly Clemson and one other school. So he may take all those visits. He may take one of those visits before he gets ready to make a decision. And then, the one kid that is publicly scheduled to make a decision is Joel Williams, the
Right.
four-star DB out of Baton Rouge. He's going to be announcing on September the 9th, and I think that Alabama is going to end up getting his commitment. I think they'll be extremely happy when he jumps on board. But I don't know if that's going to be the only kid from Louisiana that Alabama could end up signing this year. I think there's some other kids that they're heavily involved in, and one kid in particular I'd really watch out for is Kyle Edwards, four-star running back out of Destrehan, Louisiana. Was a backup to John Emery last year. John Emery, on top overall running back for the country, signed with LSU. Probably going to make a big impact for the Tigers this year. He's taking over the reins at Destrehan High School this year. Big kid, 6 foot, 205, 210 pounds, very physical runner, power runner. And I think Alabama's in pretty good shape with him. I think they're in the driver's seat. And, a lot of people will say, well, does that mean that Alabama's going to miss out on a kid like Zachary Evans if they ended up taking another running back such as Kyle Edwards? And I just don't think that's the case. I think Alabama's probably starting to lean more towards they need 2 to 3 running backs in this class. And, if they could get Zach Evans and Kyle Edwards on board to go along with Roydell Williams, I think they would be extremely happy, because you look at the running back situation in Tuscaloosa right now. Najee Harris and Brian Robinson clearly going to be the top 2 guys on the team this year, and there's a good chance we could see both of those guys leave after this season if they both have great seasons. And Alabama's running back room is going to be pretty thin if both of those guys end up deciding to leave. So I think 2 or 3 running backs is a definite plus for Alabama this year, and I think they're certainly going to try to get 3 running backs in this class. So if we saw Alabama make a really strong push for Kyle Edwards, which I think they are, I think they're really recruiting him, and if he jumps on board, I don't think that means that they feel like they're missing on Zach Evans at all. I think it just means that they're trying to take 3 running backs.
Andrew Bone with us, the Bama football recruiting report. The great thing about Bone is if you have a question or a comment, he'll comment on it or answer it. You can call in on the Bud Light hotline at 205-342-9904. I want to ask you about some other guys that you've updated folks on at BamaInsider.com, and because this is interesting here with Savell Smalls, the defensive end out of Virginia, who put out a list of 6 finalists. Alabama's on it, even though I don't think he's been on campus in quite some time. And then his dad went out, saying, "Hey, Bama fans, where's the excitement for Savell making the cut?" And I think kind of for some Bama fans, they took that the wrong way. But is Bama a serious player for this guy? What do you know about his recruitment?
Well, yeah, I think he continues to mention Alabama as one of his top schools. Has not visited Tuscaloosa since the summer of 2018. I just don't know how serious they really are with him. I mean, I think they're recruiting him. I think if he called Alabama up today and said, "Hey, I want to commit to you guys," I don't think they would turn him down. But at the same time, he just hasn't made a lot of trips to Tuscaloosa, hasn't expressed a ton of interest. So I just think we're kind of in one of those wait and see approaches. I think if he takes an official visit there, then you never know what may happen right now. Looking at his top 6 schools, I would probably say Alabama's probably number 6 on his list. Which may mean he may not take an official visit to Alabama since you can only use 5. But we'll wait and see if he ends up making a trip to Tuscaloosa. I just never really penciled him in as a future member of Alabama's class or somebody that I really thought that Alabama had a great chance to sign. But, he does have Alabama in his top 6. So, there's a chance there, and there's a chance that he'll visit. So if a visit happens, then anything can happen.
Yeah, I got ahead of myself. He's out of Washington. The next guy that I wanted to ask you about is from Virginia, and that's Big Reuben Adams Jr., a Penn State commitment. offensive lineman, 6'3", 320, that Alabama has extended an offer to. Now, he's already committed to Penn State, but Alabama, offers. How seriously is he considering Alabama, and is a possibility of a flip there, you think?
I think there's some interest, definitely some interest in both sides, and that, Alabama did extend an offer the other day. Yeah, I don't know if he could commit just yet. I think Alabama would probably wait a little bit before they would accept a commitment from him. They do have 3 offensive line commitments. Of course, a lot of people kind of consider Landon Dickerson as an addition to this class as well, since but he's already on campus and obviously doing pretty well down in Tuscaloosa. But I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens here, because I think with Alabama, I think they're pretty comfortable where they stand on the offensive line position now. They do have a couple offensive linemen that are still taking some visits, offensive line commitments who are still taking some visits. Xavier Hill's, been taking some visits over to the Mississippi schools. Damian George visited LSU and Texas A&M in the month of July. So I think that's just, maybe, potentially a backup plan for Alabama if they do lose one of their current commitments. I think Reuben Adams would certainly be a great backup plan, and probably just trying to recruit him and get him on campus for an official visit. But as of right now, I can't see him being, one of those kids who could call up Alabama and commit. I think he'll be, it would have to be something down the road.
Bone, one of the top players in the country that we've spoke about before, Justin Flo, outside linebacker out of California, has a official visit scheduled to Tuscaloosa on September the 20th, but Alabama's not in his top 4, and you seem skeptical on whether or not he'll even make that visit, right?
Yeah. As of right now, I don't think he's going to make the trip. Will he reschedule it? Possibly. He recently came out and said that he has 0 official visits scheduled, and he did have one scheduled to Alabama, so it certainly seems like that visit has been canceled. But we'll keep an eye on it, see if he ends up making it back. So obviously, he does have 5 official visits to use, so why not use all 5 of them? And Alabama's certainly been on his list for a long period of time. And I've said this probably a few times. I know I have on our website on Bama Insider. I think I've said it to you. I do think Alabama's, prior to him naming his top 4, I thought Alabama was a long shot because he had a really strong relationship with Tosh Lapoy. And when I talked to him in June, late June at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, he really mentioned like just having to rebuild some relationships and kind of develop the relationships with Pete Golding and the staff at Alabama. He just wasn't as comfortable with Alabama as he had been, last year. So I think right now, a lot of people think Clemson's in the lead for him. At one point, Georgia seemed like they were in the driver's seat, but now it looks like Clemson. You never know what may happen with his recruitment either, because he could change his mind. But Alabama's still trying to push for an official visit from him. But I think at the same time they're going to be quite fine at linebacker in this recruiting class.
Few more minutes with Andrew Bone. I want to get the latest, if there is any update, on Jordan Burch, big defensive end out of Columbia, South Carolina. I know Alabama would really love to get in the mix with this guy. Of course, everybody would. He's a beast. Clemson, Georgia, South Carolina seem to be the top 3, but Alabama's involved. Any chance that the Crimson Tide could be a serious player here?
Well, I think they are. I think you just have to continue to chip away, continue to recruit him. Not put a lot of pressure on him at all, but I don't think any school is. I mean, because he's, I think he's rated as the number 4 overall player in the country, but I think he could easily challenge for the number 1 overall spot. I mean, he's just such a great football player, and he's one of those kids that just doesn't really reveal a lot about his favorites. I think everybody's just kind of speculating as to where he's leaning. He's never said, these are my top 3 schools, or this is my number 1 school. I think everybody just kind of has their own opinion, and proximity to home is probably why everybody thinks that Clemson and South Carolina and Georgia are his top 3. He has visited Georgia, a good bit, but he was in Tuscaloosa back in June, and has a lot of interest in Alabama. And I think he'll certainly return to Tuscaloosa for an official visit, and that would be such a home run get for Alabama if they were able to lure him, because there's so much talk about how well Clemson and Georgia have been recruiting this year. Yeah, Alabama's recruiting extremely well as well, but in terms of getting 5-star type kids, the top 10 players, getting a guy like him on board would be a huge addition for Alabama in this class. I definitely think they've got a chance to land him.
Rivals 100 recently updated. Demoy Kennedy moving up. No surprise there. He's a stud. Javon Baker moving up. You seem surprised, and I am too, that Drew Sanders, a guy who just is a phenomenal football player out of Texas, actually moved down a little bit. Not a ton of movement either way, but your take on Kennedy moving up, who I think is tremendous, and Baker moving up, but Drew Sanders actually moving down a little bit.
Yeah, with Demoy Kennedy, I think when he went to Alabama's camp in June, I think a lot of people kind of forget about this. When he went to Alabama's camp in June, Alabama had not really been pressing for him,
right?
And he was expected to go to LSU. He was expected to commit to LSU within a few weeks after going to Alabama's camp, and came to Alabama's camp and just blew it up. He was one of the top players they saw on campus, and that generated a lot of buzz. And he certainly earned the right to move up in the rankings, and now the number 2 overall player in the state behind Quandarius Robinson. So Alabama has the top 3 players in the state committed in Quandarius Robinson, Demoy Kennedy, and Roy Dell Williams. Javon Baker, great showing at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge this summer. Moved up significantly. He was outside the Rivals 100, moved up about 40, I can't remember, maybe 40, 45, 46 spots, something like that. And then, like you said, Drew Sanders, I think the biggest thing with Drew was just not being seen throughout the summer. He didn't really go to any camps or work out that much. So I think, the biggest thing with him is, just having a great senior season. Some of our guys for Rivals will see him this fall, and then he'll have a chance to really show himself at an All-American game. And I think, we could easily see him move up in the rankings. I think his drop I don't think it really had anything to do with him. I think it had to do with other kids, Demoy Kennedy, Javon Baker, guys getting seen throughout the summer that had an opportunity to move up and move ahead. So Drew is certainly going to have an opportunity to really impress throughout his senior season.
All right, before we close it out, Bone, I want to ask you about a couple of freshmen that were highly recruited last year, and so far, at least, different results in their college careers. I want to start with Antonio Alfano, freshman defensive lineman out of New Jersey, has been at Alabama, been working. It appears that he was not, making the kind of move that many would have expected him to make based on his ranking. He hasn't been at practice the last couple of days. There are reports that he's dealing with a personal matter. Hopefully, he'll be back soon, but I guess it's a reminder that no matter how highly someone is rated and how skilled they are, when they get to college, it's a different level of football. Are you surprised that maybe it's been a little more difficult for him making the transition than many expected?
A little bit. We saw him down at the Under Armour All-American game last year, and he was just such a dominant player. Just kind of owned it. He was, a kid that recorded, I think, 2.5 sacks in the game. He's pretty much unblockable. But, it's pretty overwhelming, I would say, when you arrive on a college campus, especially when you have such high expectations, when everybody's telling you, you're the best defensive lineman, to come out of high school in a couple of years, and you're going to make an impact right away. And if you start to struggle a little bit, maybe you lose some of your confidence. I think that, that happens. I think that happens with a lot more players than people probably know about. And, you just have to keep coaching them up, keep talking them up, and keep trying to make them believe that, hey, long as you keep working, you're going to get on the field. You're going to make an impact because there's no doubt the talent is there. I mean, it's not like, oh wow, he just doesn't have any talent or anything like that. I think the talent's certainly there, but sometimes you've got to just kind of de-recruit him because you're not a 5-star when you get on campus. You're a 5-star in high school. You're a 0-star when you get on campus. You may be a 5-star again when you get 3 years down the road, but you've got to you got to go in there and work hard and earn your keep. But I think he'll be fine when all is said and done. But yeah, I think that a lot of people are probably surprised because defensive line is a major position of need, especially at depth for Alabama. And a lot of people were expecting him to come in and make a big impact, and hopefully hopefully he doesn't see that as a something that really bothers him because he knows that people probably expect him to come in and make a big impact, and because he isn't, hopefully that doesn't really affect his mind too much.
And just a real quick thought on Bo Nix out of Pinson Valley winning the starting quarterback job as a true freshman at Auburn.
I could have told you that was going to happen. I mean, Bo's a great football player. He had an opportunity to see him, throughout the last couple of years. I mean, just a tremendous athlete at the quarterback position. He was our number one quarterback in the country last year on Rivals, and I think he was well deserving. And that's going to be big for him. I mean, he's got a lot of. He also has a lot of high expectations. Especially coming from having an Auburn background and being a true freshman quarterback, and it's going to be and playing against Oregon in Jerry World the opening weekend. I mean, that's going to be a lot on him, but I certainly think he's going to be a great quarterback. I don't know how good he'll be as a true freshman. Obviously, he was named the starter, so he's certainly proven a lot down there, but. It's certainly tough to be a true freshman and play in the SEC, but I think he's got a chance to be a really good football player.
All right, folks. Bone's got great information like this available at BamaInsider.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Get on there and join up. Also follow him on Twitter at Andrew J. Bone, Facebook as well, and, of course, catch him Wednesdays here on the Gary Harris Show. Appreciate it as always, Bone.
All right, Gary. Thank you.